Hello, my loves. So welcome back. Today's episode is a really rich, beautiful one, especially if you are a woman in your 40s or midlife and you're not quite feeling that spark. And some people call this confidence. Some people call this magnetism. Some people call this self-esteem, self-assurance, whatever you want to call it. But the opposite is feeling stuck, feeling anxious, feeling like icky. And you can often have this thought that, gosh, I wish I just had that sense of feeling of the freedom that I had in my 20s. And I just want to let you know that in today's episode, I'm really going to be sharing with you that it is absolutely so possible for you to feel more alive and sexier than you did in your 20s. And when I say sexier, I don't mean, like your body's an A game and you're tight and you're toned and you're looking great and you've got like this fashion sense that's amazing. Yes, yes, yes to all of those things if that's what you want. But what I'm talking about is more of an inner feeling. In a past life, I was a health coach. And what led me to health coaching was actually being in my 20s, being very wild in my 20s, and constantly chasing and searching to feel and look good through everything outside of me, whether it was in my diet or whether it was in my relationships or whether it was in my career. And having a decade of emotional binge eating kind of then, as I left my 20s, had me thinking, hold on a minute. Like, I thought everything was good, but underneath, when I actually started to really pay attention, I was riddled with belief systems and stories that were literally not serving me and had me feeling high of everything outside of me. But then the minute those things changed or were not available to me, I would not feel good. I would not feel great. I would hunt for another chocolate cake, or I would hunt for another boyfriend, or I would hunt for another job role because they didn't tick. And honestly, especially speaking into the binge eating, I honestly, genuinely never thought that I would break free of emotional binge eating. I literally thought that that was who I was. I thought that that is literally how my life would be forever, that I would always have this destructive, turbulent, stressful relationship with food where it consumed my mind. And underneath it all, I realized that there was a lost girl who didn't fully really know herself. And entering into my 30s, I was like, oh, wow, okay, so there's something that gets to change, because I chased the highs and then they got me high. And then now I've landed in my 30s and it's almost like I'm having to rebuild myself. I'm trying to find the truth of who I am without having to need to avoid and escape in the food or in the relationships or the busy as fuck work career that I had. This is what I really want to highlight to you. If you caught episode 1 in particular, episode 1, I really went in on one of my core beliefs and wounds that I carried all throughout my teens into my 20s. And I avoided looking at that wound, that I'm not good enough. So as much as on the outside, my 20s looked amazing. I was traveling, living in London, had a superstar DJ boyfriend, great career, fashion buyer. Everything looked how I wanted it to be looking on the outside, because on the inside, I couldn't look at the story of I'm not good enough. It didn't really even land for me until my 30s that actually I never actually felt alive. And because I was holding so much ineffective story and belief about who I was, I had to try and create something outside of me, because that's all I knew. I didn't have access to the work, I didn't really know what was going on. And underneath the I'm not good enough, what was really transpiring and coming through is I don't look good enough for a man. So it was all about appearance. It was all about my body shape. It was all about that. So of course, Anna worked really hard in the gym. Of course, Anna worked really hard at fashion and what she was wearing and trying to be and attract from what I looked like, because I didn't know who I was. And underneath it all, there was the story of I'm not good enough. Landing in my 40s now has been the most beautiful experience, because I've been able throughout the last decade, I've been able to really identify the false self. When I really started to realize that some of the things that I was doing, even some of the things that I was saying, even some of the people that I was hanging out with, was all to fit into some ideal identity that I thought would be loved, liked, approved of. If I was the popular one, if I had a great career, and if I was successful, and if I was in a relationship, then no one would ever be able to see the truth of what I was experiencing inside. It wasn't until I hit rock bottom. And I don't know if you've ever identified with this yourself. To me, the truth is that when you hit rock bottom, there's only really one way to go, and that's up. Because you've literally hit the bottom of the self-hatred and the detest and the fear and the mistrust in self and others. When that's all you know and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, the only thing you can do is to find the fucking light. And that's what rock bottom was for me. I lost my job, I lost my home, I lost my boyfriend. So my idea of 20s, where everything was high and everything was great, and I was chasing, and I was chasing these things, and things looked all right, and I looked good, but I didn't feel good, and I didn't fully experience the things that I had, because in the back of my mind there was all the programming and all of the story, and that was just building, rock bottom. At rock bottom, no light, literally darkness. I felt extremely alone, even though I had tons of friends around me. I know that this is a huge experience for so many women, and sometimes this can just happen just in the middle of nowhere, and it just comes out of nowhere, and you're like, oh my God, how did I get to this? All I had was rock bottom and darkness, and I had to find a way to the light. And this is where shared determination for me birthed inside of me in such a deep, visceral level. I honestly believe that it's like an initiation for me. It was a unfolding and an entering and a breaking into a new identity and a new version of myself, and letting go of the old false self, the one that was curated around hiding from the story of not good enough, the one that was created by the fear of being alone, of being the last one on the shelf, of being the undesirable woman, you know. She was born and said yes to things and followed through with things because she was trying to avoid that painful belief that she held about herself. Entering into my 30s, I knew with sheer determination, I knew that there was only one way to go, and that was to break free of the story, break free of the narrative, break free of the emotions that I was holding onto because of that story. I know women can really identify with this because we've been so well conditioned and programmed to have to be something to others. That we have to be the great girlfriend, the great wife, the great mother, the great employee. We've got to do it all. We've got to say yes to everything. We've got to be everything to everyone. And that's historically how women have been perceived as valuable. It's in what she does, what she wears, what dress size she is, how much money she's got in the bank, how much she can put on her plate and hold it all and do it all and figure it all out and be that person for everyone. Nothing about who she is, about her heart, about how much she's devoted first and foremost to herself. When was the last time that you remember a woman being celebrated, not for getting engaged, not for having a child, not for getting a promotion, not for doing a great job, not for really celebrating you for how you handled that situation. When was the last time that you know of a woman that was celebrated for just who she is to and for herself, her own self-devotion? It's so rare. It's so, so rare. And landing in my 30s, I realized that my identity was very much built on that. And so women in this space right now are chasing, trying to prove, trying to please, trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to maintain some kind of perfectionism so that she feels that she is doing the right thing like a good girl. And, it wasn't until I landed probably at mid into my 30s, I'm going to say around 34, 35, I started going knee deep into nervous system work, somatic work, inner child, parts work, all of the work. And I didn't know what standards and boundaries was up until 34, 35. Now just let that land for a minute. I didn't know what a standard was or a boundary was until 34, 35. It saddens me that I never knew of this work earlier, because I know with full hand on heart that my life would have been completely different. Now, it's not that I regret it, but alas, here we are. When I started to really look at the concept and the learning and the distinction of standards and boundaries, I really started to look at every aspect of my life. I started to look at my health, my eating disorder, why I had that eating disorder, what beliefs I held about myself that triggered that eating disorder. Because up until then, I thought, it was just food. Food was the problem, or my greediness or my inability to control the food is the problem, or it's the calories, or I even went through a whole period of it's the certain types of sugar in the product that keeps having me go to it. Now, for sure, there are addictive sugars, but then there are also internal drivers and addictors that have us continuously saying yes and not having the boundary. I, up until this point, didn't know what a standard was, what a boundary was. And then I started looking at the standards everywhere. Health, relationships. Then I broke that down to relationships in family, relationships with friends, men and women, relationships with men, dating, specific to dating, relationship with my dog, like all the things. Money, career, business, time. I looked at my standards and boundaries everywhere. And do you know what I found? I found a lot of me putting my time, money, and energy into things that didn't matter. I was really putting myself on the firing line in places because it was still attached to the identity of the woman or the girl. I really see and relate myself as a girl in my 20s and even early 30s. The girl that was playing the identity of pushing, proving, pleasing, to feel safe, to feel good enough for the outside world to say, hey, you're good enough, because she couldn't say it to herself. And I built a life around that. I built a system and a relationship with food around that. I built a relationship with men around that. I built a relationship with money around that. I built all of the domains of my life around that identity. And even though I was starting to unhook and unravel and unfold from her, that past version of me, the habits and the routines were still very prevalent, because you know what you know and you do what you do, and your habits are formed through repetition. So, of course, I'm then left with the frustration of, I should know better. So in my 30s, it was very much about unpicking all of this. Now, this was my unpicking. Your unpicking might be in your 20s. Your unpicking might actually be in your 40s or your 50s. It doesn't matter, because you get to unpick at any time. You get to feel good at any time. Because just like I did, you get to look at, well, what matters to you? What really matters? What do you really value? And where is time, money, and energy leaking into places that actually don't feel good for you. Or maybe they're not in alignment with the woman that you want to become, or the woman that you're already becoming, or the life that you actually want to be living. I speak with my clients a lot about standards because as soon as we get into this work, women light up because it is a blueprint and an infrastructure to touch on so many different areas of your life, but also relates to your nervous system in the inner work, right? Because you're going to have to change certain things and be a stand for yourself in certain ways. And it's going to bring up some energy in the body. Your nervous system has built a certain thermostat safety point around possibly not having any standards, possibly always being the yes woman, possibly always, going halves on a date, even though you actually want to call in a man that's more of a provider. It's not for everyone, it's for some women, right? But you've built a life around saying yes to certain things and saying no to things that maybe you really actually do want to do, but there's a part of you that's scared, but you can't hold the energy in the body that is going to come about with doing something new. Something I also want to share that's really important, because as I've been approaching my 40s, there's been a lot that's been coming up for inventory and for audit. I mentioned this in my last podcast, of really being in this place of having to redefine and look at things, because there's an invitation for more richness and more depth and more just experience in my life that has more meaning. And this is the bit where standards are really going to invite you to start looking at things in detail. And that can be a little bit uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable because in my experience and with the women that I've worked with, it's like, fuck, like I chose this, and there's an element of self-abandonment. And I always reflect back to myself and to my clients, we only know what we know at the time. We only have the tools that we have at the time and the support that we have at the time of making a decision. And when we see something like that, like, fuck, I've been saying yes a lot to people that actually I don't even want in my life, but I'm in fear of being alone or not having any friends or being left on the shelf. So I keep saying yes to these people when I'm actually a no. And then noticing and seeing that is like, it can hit hard. It's hit me really, really hard. And when we see it, there's a beautiful quote that comes to mind that I hear my mentor say a lot is, awareness precedes choice. You can't intervene in a world that you can't see. So until we see it, there's nothing we can do about it because we don't see it. But then when we see it, we can start making different choices. Sometimes the choice is going to be uncomfortable. And sometimes we'll keep making that choice and we'll be like, oh my God, I can't stop seeing it and I can't stop doing it. But we have to bring it to the conscious awareness. Standards will always evolve. Every next layer, every next level, there's going to be a continuous evolution of the woman that you're becoming. Because the one truth is that change is inevitable. Change is happening constantly in the world outside of us, and we're connected to the world. We're connected to nature. We're connected to other people. Whether we're intentional about that or not, we're living in an ecosystem where we're constantly being invited to maneuver and to change ourselves, to meet ourselves in the way that we want to be met by the world and how we want to meet the world, right? That's why standards are always going to be up for renegotiation. What I say with standards is you have to have values. You have to know what your values are. I'm sure you have values. You need to relook at your values. Sometimes people can value being on their phone, but actually, is that working for you? Is it working for you to always be on your phone all the time? And actually, is that taken away from a value maybe that you have with connection with people in real life that you actually really do want? So this is why you got to really look at what you value and what is important to you. And then from there, you create your standards. So your standards are measurable. You've got to be able to say, oh, yeah, I definitely am being a stand for that standard because I can measure it. Anna goes to the gym 3 times a week. Oh, 1, 2, 3. That's her standard. What's an absolute non-negotiable for her is that one of those is a hot flow yoga class, right? So looking at that, you can see what my non-negotiable is and you can see what my standard is. And I can always change my standard. If my values change, I can easily just be like, rework it, renegotiate with myself. On top of standards, if you know your standards and if you know what you value, then you get to create a boundary, an energetic, yes, self-honoring, respectful, reverent energy of a boundary around your standard. And the amazing thing about this is when you're a stand for your standards and you are actively saying yes to your standards in all areas of your life, your boundary becomes easier and easier and easier because you are energetically being in your standard. You're not just saying it. You know, it's the difference between going on a date with a guy and saying, I want an emotionally available man. That is a standard. In fact, for me, that's a non-negotiable. I'm not sure about you. What's really important to look at with that standard, and if you were to measure that standard, is like, oh, checking in with how he feels and sharing how he feels. You can literally measure that, right? You can say that happens frequently. The rubber meets the road at the point of how available are you to your own emotional landscape? Like, how available are you when a cry hits? Do you let yourself cry without telling yourself that you're wrong or you need fixing or, oh my God, no one can see me like this, and you collapse in the face of the emotion? And do you share? Do you share how you're really feeling with yourself? Like, today I'm experiencing anxiety. Or do you just say, oh my God, I'm experiencing anxiety. I am anxious. I'm anxious, you know? And you don't actually tell someone, hey, I'm feeling a little bit anxious today. There's an element of you being a stand for the standard at what you want to call in. And that's the boundary as well, because you're respecting your own standard. I want to leave you with something, a short exercise to really be in devotion to your standards. And what that is I want you to look at where in your life right now you're deeply unsatisfied. You know, I have so many women coming to me being like, Anna, I can't bear my dating life. Anna, I can't bear my work life. Anna, I can't bear my husband, you know? So just really look at what area of your life right now is inviting you to pay some love and attention to it. And what I want you to do is I want you to look at the details. I want you to really get underneath the bonnet and look at the daily experiences that don't feel good for you. For example, if you're on a date and the standards are low or you've not looked at your standards and you keep attracting a guy that doesn't follow through with commitment, or he's flaky, or he keeps canceling dates, and it's becoming unbearable and you're deeply unsatisfied. And maybe it's triggering a story that you're not good enough, that you're never going to meet a man, that all the good men are taken, whatever it is. Then what I want to ask you, 2 things. What would need to change in that area of your life? And really look at it. Really look at what would need to change in that area of your life. For example, would you get to start using your voice with the man that's non-committal? Or would you actually have to do more of a prerequisite to the men that you're dating and ask questions that are going to support you in identifying if he is a committed guy or if he is in integrity with his word? And you get to look at, are you in integrity with your word? So really look at what would need to change in that area of your life. And then the final piece to this is, who do you need to become? What version and what woman gets to be born and gets to be put forward? Maybe it is the woman that asks, or maybe it is the woman that's clearer, or maybe it is the woman that takes space and walks away or looks at if she is in integrity with her own word and her own time commitment. I hope that this episode really landed for you. I would absolutely adore a 5-star review, and please tag me, share this episode on Instagram so I can connect with you at I am Anna Christina.